Hello, spooky friends. First, a bit of housekeeping. In these days of AI slop, you might be suspicious of a faceless channel with a smooth voice. I have too many artist friends to go for that. This is my voice. I use Kitty because I'm old, can't be arsed to be on camera. I don't like AI used to replace artists and writers. If you ever see an AI-generated image in one of my videos, it's because I didn't spot it, and if you do, please give me a heads up. Now let us never speak of it again. Sitting down in a theater to watch a scary movie has always been a special experience. But the little screen has also produced some horror gems. I love television horror, and I'd like to spend a few videos going through, year by year, and talking about those tiny terrors. We'll start in 1970. The movies are mostly American. The British television horror scene was exploding at this time with several anthology series. They aren't included because 1, they deserve a separate treatment later, and 2, mostly taped in black and white, they look more like stage plays than filmed movies. America was slower to get going, so we're starting out with only a few movies. Technically, one of them is 1969, but I've included it because it's the prequel to one of my 1970 entries.
Now read all of
Having excluded British television for its staginess, here I am starting out with something rather stagey, but beautifully done. This one kicked off the new year, airing on January 1st. An Evening with Edgar Allan Poe is a one-man tour de force starring the incomparable Vincent Price. He performs 4 tales: The Telltale Heart, The Sphinx, The Cask of Amontillado, and The Pit and the Pendulum. His madness in The Telltale Heart gives us a ripping good start. And I like that he includes the lesser-known Sphinx. I think it's easy to forget how gripping Poe's writing is, because if you're a horror fan, you're marinated in it from an early age. The only tale that had me checking my phone briefly is The Pit and the Pendulum, but honestly, they are all excellent. Also, I finally learned how to say Amontillado.
Amontillado.
Because of brief moments of slowness, I'm putting this in the A tier rather than the S, but if you haven't seen this, do. The CBS Friday night movie for January 9th, 1970 was Sole Survivor. It's the story of 5 World War II airmen who have stayed huddled around their downed aircraft in the middle of the desert for 17 years. We soon realize that the airmen are ghosts, but dead or not, they still long to be taken home. The story is loosely based on the Lady Be Good, a bomber that vanished on its maiden voyage only to be found years later in the middle of the Libyan desert. Like the Lady Be Good, our plane is discovered by an oil surveyor aircraft. The Air Force returns to the site, including 1 survivor of the crash, Brigadier General Hamner, played by Richard Basehart, who swears everyone bailed over the Mediterranean. The investigation is led by Lieutenant Colonel Gronke, played by William Shatner, fresh out of Star Trek. When the bomber's crew sees people coming, they put the plane to rights, hoping the investigators will think they went down with it, assuring they search for their bodies. Of course, that's at odds with Hamner's story about bailing over the water. Everything about Sole Survivor is top-notch. Great performances are a pleasure to watch. I absolutely recommend it, and as usual, if I can find a way to watch something, the link is in the description. Most lists of 1970 scary movies include this one. There's just one problem. It's not horror. It's poignant, lovely, and well done, but ghosts do not always equal scary. It isn't meant to scare. I left it on the list because it would be kind of strange not to include a ghost story, but that's why there's a special section on my tier list right over here, and that's where Sole Survivor is going. Great movie, not horror. First off, may I express my great irritation at meaningless movie titles. Do you want the audience to forget the name of your film? Now, Ritual of Evil is fine. There is an actual ritual in there. But Fear No Evil is nonsense. It should have been called Reflection of Evil or something. 1969's Fear No Evil was actually a pilot for a show to be called Bedeviled. It did well enough for a sequel, but not a series, and I get that. It was intriguing, but the writing was opaque and difficult to follow at times, though much clearer than its successor. The basic story is a guy buys a really cool-looking mirror. Problem is, demons and stuff. Dude dies, leaving his fiancée with weird dreams of him beckoning her to the mirror. Louis Jourdan is called in. He plays David Sorrell, a psychologist trained in the paranormal, but he's an absolute skeptic. I would find that weird, except I'm basically that without a psychology degree. He jumps in being all serious and suave and French. Eventually, he catches on because in movies, demons cannot be explained away by stress, drugs, and mental illness. Will he save the gorgeous blonde? Will he save himself? The mirror effects are remarkable for the day. There's a great review by Conjure Cinema where the editor talks about the effects. I've linked it below. A year later, in February 1970, Ritual of Evil is aired. I love this movie. Is it good? Nah. It's overacted and often confusing, but there are a few things that are great. 1. The witch is fabulous, and her evil statue is very naughty. 2. Anne Baxter's outfits. She plays a stumbling, irritating drunk who is sparkling from head to toe. Beyoncé would push her down for those fits. I especially love the very end, which I won't tell you because spoilers. The movie begins with an heiress flying off a cliff, and over time we discover a cult, sacrifices, and a deliciously evil witch. The airborne heiress was a former patient of Dr. Sorrell's, so he's called in by the family to find out what could have happened. He must race to save the younger cousin, Loie, played by Belinda J. Montgomery, as she may be the next victim. Both of these movies have the psychedelic flavor of the time, and both are very much worth watching, especially with pharmaceutical accompaniment. They aren't my personal favorites, but they are classics. I'm going to put them in the B tier. Back before television was cool, you were either a movie star or a television star. But when those movie stars aged and roles dried up, you get things like Glenn Ford in Brotherhood of the Bell. The Brotherhood is a secret fraternity who initiates recruits in a fancy room with a giant Chinese bell in the middle. They promise you anything you want and have the connections to provide it. The catch is that eventually they will ask for a favor. Andrew Patterson, played by Ford, has been a member since college. After attending a newbie's initiation, he's taken aside by an elder brother and given an assignment. At last, the favor is asked. The favor requires him to betray a lifelong friend. Things go wrong, and Patterson decides he wants to expose the Brotherhood, but of course, the people he confides in, unbeknownst to him, are also Brotherhood. Oopsie. Patterson's life begins falling apart very quickly. The Brotherhood of the Bell could be categorized as a thriller, but there are particular moments that make it a good fit here. At one point, he's ambushed by a talk show host, and the cruel glee of the audience takes the dread up 10 notches. It's a great film, and I was pleased to see Robert Pine in a small but important role. Brotherhood is S tier all the way. Anthony Perkins is finally lured to television in How Awful About Allan. Allan developed psychosomatic blindness following the death of his father, and has just returned home from a psychiatric hospital. He lives with his sister Catherine, played by Julie Harris. He also has a former fiancée who comes around, played by Joan Hackett. Catherine takes in a mysterious boarder despite Allan's reticence. She claims he has a throat injury and can only speak in a whisper. Soon, that whisper is speaking Allan's name, and the few shadows he can see are coming to get him. While a bit predictable, there are red herrings, and on the whole, How Awful About Allan is very well done. However, despite the good writing and great performances, the movie doesn't have sticking power. I barely remembered it 30 minutes after I watched it. This is why I'm putting it in the B tier. I recently did a watch-through of Eureka, and in Season 3, there's an episode where town folks grab various appliances and use it to build some contraption, all while asleep, and I thought, hey, that's Night Slaves. In this case, James Franciscus and Lee Grant play a couple whose car breaks down in a small town. You know that's never good. Franciscus's character, Clay, is recovering from a car accident and has a metal plate in his head, which is why, when the entire town is hauled away in the night, he is not. They're returned in the morning a bit groggy, with no knowledge of what happened to them in the night. Now, I don't want to give everything away, Despite being silly on the surface, Night Slaves is an entertaining little film. It had the sticking power that How Awful About Allan didn't, mostly because it was unusual and had some surprising turns. I ended up really enjoying it, and call me crazy, but despite the corniness, it's going on the A tier. If you follow my channel, you know this movie is very special to me. This was my first scary movie, and it started me down my spooky path. I talked quite a bit about it in a video on John Llewellyn Moxie, so I'll be brief. The House That Would Not Die is adapted from the book Amy Come Home by Barbara Michaels. Yet another movie star, Barbara Stanwyck, makes her television debut as Ruth, who is moving into an old house with her niece Kitty. Things are strange as soon as they arrive. Kitty is possessed by a former resident, who naturally wants her murder brought to light. This movie is why I'm a sucker for these stories. It's wonderfully atmospheric, but I'm not going to sit here and claim it's the best horror movie in the world. It has some nice bits, but overall, it's disappointing, especially at the end. Great for a 6-year-old. For an adult, I'm afraid it's going in the C tier. From a disappointing ending to a thoroughly interesting one, we go to Crowhaven Farm. Hope Lang and Paul Burke play Maggie and Ben Porter, who have moved to the farm Maggie just inherited. Upon arrival, Maggie begins to have visions of herself from hundreds of years ago and fleeting glimpses of witchcraft. Eventually, she learns there's a score to settle. The performances are fun, especially the side characters, and the atmosphere is super creepy. It isn't a perfect film, but it's definitely worth watching. We'll put this final film in the B tier. 1970 was a relatively sparse year as horror television explodes through the rest of the decade. I have a very enjoyable few months ahead of me as I watch through everything. Special thanks to David Deal for his book Television Fright Films of the 1970s, where I got most of this list, and Conjure Cinema for their great reviews. And thank you, spooky friends. I love you to death. Good night.